Token trap is really the hottest topic right now. We hear all the news about all those big, massive companies have to roll back their AI initiative just because the cloud bill has gone out of control. Is that something you're facing as well?
Yes, exactly. And I think most likely you have heard about the story of Uber, right? I think they use up all their annual budget for the token cost within a quarter.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the DFWIT Podcast, the voice of the North Texas technology and startup community. I'm your host, Feiyin. Today, we're honored to have a true industry leader in the data science and AI world who has extensive experience across multiple industries, from semiconductors to healthcare to hospitality to telecom. He has also had experience founding his own company and has been a great mentor and advisor to young professionals and inspiring entrepreneurs in the community. Please welcome to the show, Bo Gu. Bo, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you, Feiyin. It's great to be here. I really love what DFWIT has been building for the community, and it's really excited to be a part of this conversation.
Yeah, we're very honored to have you here. I have so many questions for you, so let's dive right in.
That's great.
It's been fascinating to watch how the landscape has changed with all the AI things. And all the company nowadays is scrambling to call themselves an AI first company. But I know as a leader, you have been dealing with models and advanced technology for a very long time, long before this gold rush started. So when did you and your teammate at AT&T start to explore generative AI?
Yeah, that's a great question. I want to walk you through our journey in generative AI. I recall that in the October-November timeframe, that's in 2022, and that's the time when ChatGPT was introduced, right? And that's strike the industry by thunder, right? And then in AT&T, we started in March 2023. That's roughly 3 months after it got introduced, and then we built a platform called AT&T platform. And then after that, my team immediately utilized that platform to do some use cases such as call summarization, which is conducted before the call center agents and customers will face their conversation. Traditionally, our call center agents need to manually type it down, summarize what the call is about. But at that time, because of GenAI, we are able to use prompt engineering. We use prompt engineering to summarize what the call is about in a standard format. And that can potentially save lots of seconds or even minutes of the call center agent's time. That can definitely increase the productivity of call center agents and standardize the processes for doing the summarization and later we can use analytics to build upon the summarizations and generate more insights out of that. So that's how we started in 2023.
That's great. So you started really early back in 2023. What's next?
Yeah, so 2023, I would say that's the year of prompt engineering, and 2024, that's the year of RAG. Retrieval augmented generation. What it does is prompt engineering is very powerful. You can summarize the conversation, you can summarize an article and in a standard format, right? Later we can analyze upon. But it could lead to hallucination. What it means is if it does not find any answers out of the context of the articles or of the call transcripts, you will make things up, which is very bad, especially in the corporate settings. You definitely don't want to, let's say, hallucinate saying that we own our customer credit of $20 if it is not really from the conversation they've been talking about. So we start to use RAG into our work. Right? And especially RAG is very powerful if you have a manual, if you have a knowledge base, like for our agents, what they can do, what they cannot do, what they can give the customer the credits without authorization from their managers. Once we have all those informations in the RAG, in the knowledge base, that act like a guardrail to protect our general AI solutions that can provide the accurate information to our customers.
Did you see a big difference after you add the RAG?
Of course. Right, so the rate of the hallucination decrease dramatically. So that's the major benefit of RAG. And right now, I believe that I will not say any, but I would say most of the corporate, they should have already implemented RAG by default.
Yeah, makes sense. What about 2025?
2025, that's the year of the Agentic framework. And I recall that I went to the Google conference, Google Next conference in Las Vegas. My mind was blown by how different industry use Agentic framework. In AT&T, we use Agentic framework, particularly in the call center, in the contact center applications. It is Google CCAI. We started to use Agentic framework to interact with the customers. That is the intent prediction, right? When customer talk to us, we try to understand what the customer's intent is. What they want to do is a building question, or is a customer service question, is a technical solution questions, and route them to the right agents. And then also that's the year we started to try to enhance our internal capability. If we can resolve some of the solutions within the agents, virtual agents, instead of routing to the call center human being agents, that can tremendously save our costs. That can also increase the customer satisfaction. So 2025, starting 2025, we'll have more and more Agentic framework solutions within AT&T. And right now this year, we have been seeing lots of agents running in production, not only limited to the call center, but in lots of different areas, such as how we can use that to replace and to transform some of the traditional administrative processes that were lots of human gated, right? And right now, most of the items can be automated, and we still have some human in the loop, right, to ensure that things should be done in a certain way, and we have the human beings have the final say, but lots of procedures, lots of approval, lots of reviewing, give feedbacks, those kind of things have been replaced by generative AI framework.
Wow, that's amazing. You've really been in the front and center of this entire journey, because a lot of people just start the Agentic AI this year, but you already have things in production and seems to be making big business impact already. So awesome.
Yeah, thank you. I think AT&T set us up with us AT&T platform. I would say definitely that's the game changer. I'm very glad that we have a top-down approach, and our CEO, our CTO, they put lots of effort in promoting generative AI, and that allow us to adopt this latest technology from startup.
Awesome. So what percentage of your work is still traditional AI these days?
Yeah, I would say that's a very good question. So I would say maybe 20% of the new work are still being done by traditional AI, and 80% of new work are being done by generative AI. But for some of the existing works, if they were originally developed in the traditional AI, and we still use the traditional AI to do it, because traditional AI is still very effective in solving the problems, especially some of the classic problems like classification, and for example, in the fraud, in the churn prediction, traditional AI still play a major part into it.
Makes sense. So it's not always about the newest and latest trend, it's about using the right tool to the right problem.
Yes, exactly. And I always told my team is let's don't use a tool, right, for the sake of using it. We have to have a reason. We have to have a rationale why we want to use generative AI instead of an old traditional way, right? If just some classifier, you can use XGBoost to achieve very good results, and you don't have to use generative AI to do it. And also cost is a very large factor, because at the beginning, people might neglect that, actually there was a pretty significant token cost associated with Gen AI solutions. And XGBoost is literally free, right? If you train it well, it runs, and then most likely you will not facing any big issues unless your input data changes significantly. And every now and then we can still retrain the model using XGBoost, and we can still achieve very good results. And that's not, for example, that is not the projects I would advise to migrate to Gen AI, just because Gen AI is the new shining toy.
Makes sense. This actually leads me to a broader question. I'm sure with all the AI hype right now, you've got more demands and more business requests, right? So how do you pick the project to start with? Everything is an AI priority these days, right?
Yeah, this is actually an excellent question, because that's things we've been thinking every day. And every time we have lots of projects, we definitely pick and choose. And I would say we use 2x2 matrix to look at how we're going to look at the projects and prioritize the projects. If you think about it, if you put the business impact, right, in the vertical axis, and you put the complexity of the technology in the horizontal axis, and then you can divide it into a 2x2 or 4 quadrants. The first category of the use cases you have to address is those use cases which fall into the quadrant of the high business impact and low technology complexity, because that is the low-hanging fruits. Let's take the call summarization use cases as an example, right? So every time, let's say, we can save maybe 30 seconds, we can save 2 minutes, or range somewhere between that, right? For every single call after the call is finished. And given the volume we have, millions of calls every single year, you can consider how many minutes of human labors we are using in the call summarization, in the traditional manual call summarization. And right now we can repurpose those hours into other ways so our agents can better serve our customers. You can see that the impact is huge. And the technology associated with that is pretty straightforward. We just need to do the call summarization, we need to do the auditing, to do some QA to make sure that the summarization is accurate, right? So the ROI of this particular project is huge. So this is one area I think definitely we should address first. The second quadrant, I would say it is where the business impact is high and the technical complexity is high. Those items, I think we should look into it, but we can approach them in a phased approach. We consider those as a moonshot, right? If it is successful, great. It will going to create huge impacts to our company. But the problem is it might be a multi-year work instead of a sprint, right? So we need to plan that ahead of time. We need to divide that into phases, and hopefully for each of the phase, we're able to quantify what the impact it is, can gain the support from the senior leadership team, and support us to do that work, do that approach in a multi-year stretch. And there were two other quadrants in the 2x2 matrix. One is the low business impact and low technical complexity. That items, I will consider them is, it's good to have, but it's not something we must have. If we have bandwidth, if we have capacity, and we can solve those problems as well. But if we don't have bandwidth, maybe that's items we can put that on our backlog. Once in future, if we have bandwidth, we can address that. The items which have low business impact and very high technical complexity, that's items definitely I think we should get rid of. The reason why is, particularly right now, there is a term called the token trap. Right? So you can burn lots of tokens, but if there is no business impact tied to it, I think that's definitely the items or use cases we should kill ASAP.
Makes sense. Very great framework. Where do you think this call center use case you keep mentioning about fell in this quadrant?
Yeah, definitely. That's a high business impact and no technological complexity, right? And after that, as a follow-up for that particular call center summarization project, we have some other call center related projects associated with that, and some of them come with increase of technology capacity. So we can see the shift of moving from the first quadrant, high business impact and no technology capacity, into the right side, high business impact and more complex technology. But for this particular use cases, we still see lots of impact. We are able to quantify that. So that's why our company are interested in invest in those projects. You have more and more technology complexity associated with that.
That makes sense. So in general, how do you measure the outcome of a business impact for this kind of AI project?
That's great. That's a great question. ROI, the return on investment, that's definitely the metrics we look into, right? It could be multi-year ROI. You can calculate cash flow. You can use DCF to calculate it, discounted cash flow to calculate the impact, or to be simple, you can calculate within year impact, right? Basically, it's how, let's say if you take 10 people 3 months to finish one work, and you can calculate what's the labor cost of the development, and you also need to looping into you need to also consider the token cost, the cloud expenses, the maintenance and support. So you can, most likely you can estimate the cost part of a new development very accurately, right? And then the harder part is to measure the business impact, right? It could be revenue increase, it could be the cost saving or cost avoidance. And then here we need to be very honest with ourselves, right? What is the actual measurable impact we're going to achieve, right? So once you have the impact piece and once you have the development cost piece, and you can calculate ROI. And speaking, if the within year ROI is more than 1, and that's a no-brainer, then we should take it, right? And the key thing is we need to be honest with ourselves and put a quantifiable target as a metrics, and we need to make sure that all the projects we generate or all the projects we work on should at least meet that threshold.
So without going into too much detail, was the business leader of the call center happy with your result?
Yeah, so that's why I think, we deliver very good results to them. So that's why we have a lot more and more projects from the call center business unit partners, and then they trust us to deliver more generative AI projects to them.
Yeah,
and
awesome.
together we can achieve more, creating more business impact to our company.
Yeah, for sure. Looking back to this entire AI journey, what do you think are some fundamental challenges in generative AI that traditional ML had never to deal with?
In my opinion, the two challenges we have, which in large language models, which our traditional AI does not have, is the hallucination and the token trap. Hallucination, this is pretty straightforward, especially it occur a lot in the earlier models. GenAI has a tendency to make things up if they cannot find answers for you, right? But I'm glad right now we already have a solution, and it's pretty widely used. Use the RAG to ground up the truth, and then to ground up the knowledge base. So in that case, the large language model will have a look at the menu, look at the knowledge base to answer within in the context instead of making things up, right? The second thing is a little bit tougher is the token trap, because model can be pretty costly, especially you don't put lots of guardrails into what you want large language model to do. So I can definitely go deeper into this topic if you want.
Yeah, for sure, because token trap is really the hottest topic right now. We hear all the news about all those big, massive companies have to roll back their AI initiative just because the cloud bill has gone out of control. Is that something you're facing as well?
Yes, exactly. And I think most likely you have heard about the story of Uber, right? I think they use up all their annual budget for the token cost within a quarter, right? You can see that, right? If we don't have a very good control, not only Uber but other companies as well. If we don't have a very good control of the token, what we can use, that can very easily lead to a very lofty bill. Right, and the way how I look at it is there are a couple of ways we can avoid the token trap. Of course, we talk about look at the project, the 2x2 matrix and where it fall into, right? If there's very little business impact, and then that does not justify the use of the token. But also a lot of things we are looking at is if we have some frontier model running in some use cases 1 year ago or 2 years ago, do we have a better solution to save token costs associated with that, right? This is one area our company is looking into. Is we have some internal research data, and we also have some industry data showing that right now the greatest or the latest open source model, their performance is as good as the frontier model which we produce or which was available 1 year or 2 years ago. We also have technique use the fine tuning, right, to make some smaller size of the model be able to answer some specific questions, which the result is comparable or if not even better than the frontier model which was introduced 1 year or 2 years ago. So to avoid the token trap or to mitigate the token cost, we might be able to swap some of the use cases which use the frontier model 1 or 2 years ago with the open source model that can save the cost. And to that point, a lot of things right now we are looking into is for the new project, right? Do we have the right size of the model to do the work, right?
So if you have a new project right now, how do you set this up to save some token costs?
Yes, that's an excellent question. I think the best way to do it is choose the right model to do the right things. Right? There are lots of models available for choose. There's different frontier models. You have Gemini models, you have OpenAI models, you have Anthropic models, and some models are good at something. And also they have different costs, different tiers, right? If for some of the projects, if you need lots of reasoning, right, go with the best model. For example, this is my personal opinion. Go with the Anthropic Opus model. That gives you the best results, but it's also very costly. If you look at the cost, I believe there's 1 million token output for $25. That's pretty costly model. And some of the work, right, if you want some daily coding work, right, let's assume that you plan it well with Opus model. You plan it well, how you plan the structure and how to approach your problem and do the thorough planning and use the Opus model. Once you have that plan or MD files, which you generated, right, and then you can switch to second tier models, right, which are very good in generating the codings, but not as good as reasoning. And you can use those models, even turn off the reasoning feature, right? Use that models to do the actual coding for you, do the debugging, do the testing for you, right? And then for some of the work, let's say if you just want to do a summarization, in that case, use the cheapest model. Cheapest model, for example, Gemini Flash model, that is sufficient enough for you to do any of the summarizations, right? So in that case, you don't even need to use Opus or Solid or any of the frontier models. If it's just about summarization of a document, of a code transcript, you can use some budget models, such as, let's say, Gemini Flash or GPT 4.1 mini, something like that. And even further, you can swap those models, frontier models, with open source models. Right now, the latest and greatest open source model, like Gamma 4, and if your company can use, let's say, foreign models from China and DeepSeek or Crane model, they are also very good choices, right? My point is that choose the right model to do the right things and that can help you to get the best ROI.
Do you have any specific example you actually switch from a frontier model to a maybe open source model or lower tier model?
Yeah, actually, that's what we have been doing in the last years. And then we have observed some of the open source models, their results is as good as the older ChatGPT models. So we are replacing them very actively. We are looking for all those opportunities. We are scanning through all the use cases which use the older models, especially GPT-4 series or GPT-4 mini series, and we are evaluating the opportunity whether we can swap them with the open source models. Let me talk a little bit more about swapping the models, because you cannot just say, hey, I feel like I can swap the model and go to do the work.
Right.
You need to do very thorough evaluation to see whether the open source model, the output is comparable to the frontier model. And especially in the corporate environment, especially in production, right? All the decisions very seriously. In those cases, most likely we need to go through a very thorough QA and make sure our business unit partners, they are aligned with us, they agree with us that we're able to use the model, open source model, to replace the frontier model by validating our metrics.
With all these nuances generative AI and agentic AI brings, what are some core data science principles that will always remain true regardless of how technology changes?
Yeah, first is data, right? Garbage in, garbage out, right? We have to do the data cleanser. We have to make sure that the data are creating a certain way and that can be able to generate insights, right? Also, we need to perform the best practice of training data and the test data split, right? It could be 80-20, it could be 5-fold split, right? We want to make sure that we are not going to pick into the future or pick into the test set in order to train the model. And also, we need to have the domain knowledge, right? And we need to be able to tell whether the model, the output is reasonable or not. And last but not the least, and this is extremely important for large language models, we need to have a systematic way to do the evaluation, right? In the old days, in the traditional data science practice, right, we can calculate accuracy, we can calculate F1 score, right? But in GenAI, because of most of the use cases unstructured data, we still need to figure out a way to evaluate the model in a fair way, in a quantifiable way, right? It could be accuracy, it could be relevant. We need to be objective to evaluate the model to see whether the newer model can replace the previous model.
Yeah, makes sense. Speaking of these core principles and core competency of a data scientist, I think it's a perfect segue into your personal journey outside of your 9 to 5. I know last year you joined DFWIT AI competition yourself and won the first place. Would you like to share of your journey with everybody? How come an enterprise data science director would be interested in joining an AI competition by yourself?
Yeah, that's excellent questions, and I'm a true believer of lifelong learning. And then actually joining the hackathons or the competitions is really, I believe that's a really good way for us to learn the latest technology. And actually that competition, that was my fifth hackathon or competition participation, right? We started in 2024 in September. We joined first, some of us in AT&T, we joined the first AWS NVIDIA hackathon, and followed by that, we joined the Databricks hackathon. We won the second place. And then we also joined Google hackathons, other AT&T internal hackathon until we went to the DFWIT and then participated in the hackathon. And very fortunately, we got the first place. But I would say that's because we have lots of collaborations with the same amount of team members. Again, we know, okay, what is a winning formula, right? Like how we address the problem, how we're going to break down a complex problem into small pieces, how we're going to put a POC together and later add new features into that, right? But I truly believe that by participating in the hackathon IT competitions, that will give us the opportunity to learn. And the way how we learn it is much, much better compared to we follow a training video or following a tutorial or read the books, right? Because we have the hands-on opportunities. And that experience also, we can incorporate that into corporate work because I can share my knowledge with my team members. They will view me not just from the ivory tower, but within the same trench with them. They will basically take my work seriously because I have the hands-on experience. I do exactly the same thing like what they're doing.
This is how a great leader should be thinking about.
Yeah.
Now, as you participate in all these different AI competition, I'm sure you have to learn all kinds of new technology, right? So how do you keep up with the latest trend these days?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And I look at YouTube videos and LinkedIn posts very regularly. I want to learn what is the latest technology. I just give you an example. Starting last year, November timeframe, there was OpenClaw, and then later there was a leak of how Claude Code do the hardest engineering, and then there was Ernest, and then most recently there was some concept called loop engineering, right? So those technologies we have to observe that through YouTube or LinkedIn posts because that's where the latest technology are available. In my opinion, we just cannot wait for the formal training to be available in order to observe that, because that will be maybe a few weeks or a few months later, right, compared to the latest technology. And then, so scan through the latest technology, that's the first part we do. The second is participate, right? So once you know, okay, this is the latest technology, and most of them, and right now I feel like this is the best time to try that. Most of the technologies are open source and you can clone that into your local repo and you can try it out yourself, right? It does not take that much of time and effort to deploy your own OpenClaw or Hermes agent and then play around with that. And during the whole process, you can learn a lot out of it.
Makes sense. So there's really no secret or magic, really just you have to dive in and get your hands dirty. Practice makes perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
With that, we're reaching to the end of today's podcast. As a great mentor and advisor, do you have any words to inspire our young professional and young viewers out there?
I believe this is the greatest time in the human history that for us to learn the new technologies and apply the new technologies into real world, real ideas. I've been working in semiconductor before, and I've done my own startup company before. And I can tell you at that time, to build a product on an idea, it takes tremendous time and effort, and you have to hire the right person to do it. For example, in the old days, right, like 10 years ago, when I did my startup companies, I need to hire a front engineer, I need to hire a back end engineer, at least, and a designer to make things working, right? Right now, everything I talk about, we can make it happen within a weekend using the latest GenAI technology and agents and vibe coding, right? So right now, this is definitely a great time for us to do. My opinion is, if you have a great idea, try it out. Try out during the weekends, try out in the evenings, and bring your ideas to some vibe coding tools and see what it will bring to you, right? You can always start from the first prototype and then keep adding new features into it until you hit a very good minimal viable product. And then you might be able to bring into a VC. And a lot of things I would say is DFWIT is a great resource. There were lots of They have a lot of talents, they have a lot of knowledge sharing, and every year they host a IT competition. That's a very good proving ground for us to practice and to bring our idea into a product, and then to receive feedbacks from the practitioners in this industry. And then I think right now sky is the limit, and I think we just need to try.
This has been an absolutely insightful and fun conversation packed with so many great frameworks and personal wisdom. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Yes, thank you, Feiyin. Thank you for having me.